Hi there, it's Georgi Zhekov here for CG Thoughts. We'll start by creating the text. Let's go to Create, Shapes, Text. Then for the font, I'm gonna set Arial Black. For the size, about 40. And as a text, we're gonna type CG Thoughts Plus. Okay, so then I'm gonna add a bevel modifier. Bevel, and in the bevel values I'm gonna add 4.5 for the height. We have a nice extruded text. Then I'm gonna rotate the text, so I'm gonna rotate it about 90 degrees on the x-axis. Okay, then we're gonna create our plane for the floor. So in the create panel, creating a plane, it's gotta be pretty big. I'm gonna set it up to 500 by 500. The reason for that is that after that we're gonna put, oh, actually 5000 by 5000 is pretty high, so I'm gonna reduce the width to about 300. So the reason for this is that we're gonna put a spotlight in the scene, and we don't need to see the edge of the plane. So we're gonna add the spotlight, light panels, standard, and I'm gonna use a target spotlight. Then put it like this. So we're gonna aim our light a little better. Okay, we're gonna make a quick test render just to see the falloff. As you can see, it's pretty harsh, so we're gonna have to adjust the spotlight settings. On the spotlight parameters, I'm gonna reduce the hotspot beam to about maybe 20 or so, and okay, I'm gonna set follow field to 40, and let's check this out. Oh, I guess it looks quite nice. Maybe introduce a little bit more falloff. Okay, I guess that's okay. Then I'm gonna change the color of our light to a light bluish, something like this. Okay, it's all good. Then we need to add textures to our text. So what I'm gonna do is open the material editor, reduce its size a little bit, just to fit in. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick a diffuse color for the text. So what I've used previously was 160 for the red, 128 for the green, and 199 for the blue. Okay, Oh, one, one, two. Okay, that's it. After that, okay, let's apply it first to our text. Then we need to create the holes in the text. So I'm gonna use a bump map. Just click on the bump map, and we're gonna add a dent to it. I'm gonna add dent. So for the size, I'm gonna input 22. For the strength, 10, and we're gonna input 3 iterations. So let's preview it. Oh, actually, like this, it's not looking pretty good. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a second dent for the white color. So next to it, I'm gonna add another dent, and here for the size, I'm gonna input 157, for the strength 20, and we're gonna leave the iterations for 2. Then let's make a render again. Okay, I guess that looks a lot nicer. And you, of course, you can play with the settings. So as you notice, the size changes the holes. You can change also the strength, but I think I'm gonna return to 1.7, excuse me, and about 24 strength. Okay, then we need to add texture to our plane. For the floor, I used a texture that you can download from DeviantArt. I've just used the texture, open it in Photoshop, and desaturated it. So what we're gonna do now is, next to diffuse color, I'm gonna use a bitmap and set it to my spot. Okay, so if we apply it to our plane, here's what we're gonna get. It's not looking pretty good, and it looks quite stretched, so we're gonna need to add UVW modifier. I'm gonna use UVW map. I'm gonna use planar, and I guess that's okay. Let's check it now. Okay, now looks good. What we're gonna do now, let me render it again. It's not using the correct part of the texture that I want. We're gonna need to rotate the texture. So what we're gonna do now is, I'm gonna show the texture in the viewport, and I'm gonna input the settings here by adding value to this panel. You can rotate the texture. what I'm gonna do now is input about 39, maybe about 16. We'll change the 3, I guess. Let's check. Okay, maybe we can change it a bit. Let's try this. Okay, I guess that looks okay. Then I'm gonna add one more color to the texture, so click on the diffuse color, and for the red I'm gonna input 134, for green 73, and for blue 157. Okay, and then I'm gonna change the amount to about 60. Let's try this. In my opinion, well, I'm gonna leave it 60 for now. Then what we're gonna do now is we're gonna introduce another light that is gonna cast shadows. The reason that I'm not using the spotlight for the shadows is that it's casting pretty bizarre shadows in my opinion. Check this out. I'm gonna turn the shadows on for the spotlight and make a render. It looks quite yeah, you think it's not really good. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add an omni light around here and in front, and if we render it, you'll notice that it's blown up pretty harsh. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna change its settings. First we're gonna turn the shadows on. For the intensity I'm gonna change it to 0.6 and make a test render. I guess it's quite okay. Still I'm gonna turn on the decay for the light. It's gonna cause it to spread not so much. There's the ring. This blue ring indicates the range of the light, so I'm gonna put it right about here, and let's make another test render. Maybe push it a little bit backwards. Oops. Render it again. And maybe introduce a little bit more light. So I'm gonna change it to 0.75. Okay, I guess that looks pretty good. And we have soft shadows around the letters. So the next thing to do is we're gonna add our p-flow. I'm gonna press 6 on the keyboard and the particle flow menu will pop out. I'm gonna remove the depot and description, so we have a little more space to work with. I'm gonna right click, new, and I'm gonna add empty flow. Then I'm gonna add a board event, connect the two pieces, and append operator, position object, and append operator delete. I'm just right clicking on the event panel, so if you're wondering what I'm doing, so I'm gonna change the display color to our particles to white so we can see them better. And for the bird, I'm gonna change our image stop to 0 and the amount to 5000. Then for the position object, I'm gonna add our text, and for the delete, I'm gonna set it to by particle age and add about 120 frames with a 10 frame variation. If we have our particles here, I'm gonna zoom it. I just pressed Alt and W, that maximizes our viewport. So if we scrub through the timeline, you'll see that although I introduced the delete operator, nothing is happening. That's because we have only 100 frames and we need to introduce a little bit more. I'm gonna go to this panel here and I'm gonna change the length to 150. Click OK. If we scrub now, you can see that after 120 frames the particles start to disappear. Okay, another quick tip: if we have a slower machine, let me select. I pressed H on the keyboard so I can select the objects, and from the scene I'm going to select the pflow source, and if we go to the modify panel, we can change the quantity multiplier that changes the particles inside of our preview window, and as for now it's set to 50%, but if you have a slow machine and a heavier scene as well, you might want to change it to 10. That's gonna speed up the things. So what we're gonna do now is, oops, I changed the render percentage. So let's make a FumeFX container. So let's go to the create panel, FumeFX, and I'm gonna switch to my top view, and it's gonna be right about this size. So the next thing we're gonna do is we need to introduce a particle source. So from the helpers menu, I'm gonna create a particle source. You can put it wherever you want. So let's make it this big so we can see it. And I'm gonna pick my particle flow source. Okay. Now, if we press Ctrl Shift and F, the FumeFX user interface will show up. And let's start from the General tab. I'm gonna set my spacing to 1. Then under the simulation tab, we're gonna set the quality to 10. We'll change the maximum iterations to 80. And then we're gonna introduce a little bit of turbulence, about 0.2, 15 for 7 frames, and we'll crank up the detail to about 5. And let's go to the object source tab and pick up our source, and then under the illumination tab I'm gonna pick up our lights like this. Okay, so I guess we're ready to render a test simulation, so I'm gonna press start simulation. Yep, I forgot to stop the fuel. We don't need any fuel because we only want the smoke to simulate, so I guess this will be okay now. Let's make another simulation tab. Now let's make a test render just to see how does it look. As for now, the smoke is too thick, and also it's raising too high. So what we're gonna do now is change a bit the settings. So I'm gonna lower the buoyancy to about 0.3, let's say, and under the rendering panel we'll click off the fire because we don't need it, and we're gonna reduce the opacity of the smoke a lot to about 0.2, let's say. Now let's make another simulation with these settings. Okay, I guess that's okay. Let's make another test render. As for now, it looks a lot better. Still, we need to add some more resolution to it and play a bit with the opacity. So in order to get more resolution, we need to reduce the voxel size, and for this we need to change the spacing to a lower value. Still, if we change it a lot, if you can see down here, it's showing how much memory will it use, and the lower the value of the spacing, the bigger the render time will be. And let's say if I set it to 0.2 and I press simulate, you'll see that it's simulating one frame for quite a lot of time, and sometimes we don't have this time for the simulation, so there is a little workaround, and this is fluid mapping. And basically what fluid mapping is, It's a procedural texture applied over the simulation. Uh, just imagine a big map of fractional noise applied over the simulation, and in this way uh, it's improving the quality of the final simulation. So what we need to do is to introduce the fluid mapping. I'll just have to resize my FumeFX panel. It's at the bottom, so there it is. It's under the simulation tab. We'll have to click simulate fluid mapping, and after this we'll go to the rendering tab, and under map source we'll click to fluid mapping, and here on the map setting we'll choose a noise. Okay, then we open up the material editor, and okay, we drag the noise here, we make an instance, and now we're gonna change the type to fractal and use 12 for the size, and we're gonna change the low value to 0.5. Yes, that's okay. Let's make another simulation now. Oops, I forgot to change my spacing back to a decent value, so we have to wait a bit just to stop the simulation, and let me turn it back to 1. Okay, let's resize this panel here. Okay, and run the simulation again. Let's stop it and make a test render. As you can see, the result is a lot better. Well, if you don't remember what was the last frame without the fluid mapping, let me turn it off and make another render. So check this out. If we bring it over here, as you can see, there's quite the difference. The fluid mapping render looks a lot nicer and with a lot more detail, and as well the render time is quite the same. So what we're gonna do now is, let me change the smoke color to a little bit of purplish, about this, and let's take a render. I guess we can reduce the opacity a little bit more and introduce a little bit more of the fluid mapping. Let's make another render. In my opinion, this looks pretty decent. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna reduce the spacing to about 0.3 and make a render. I've already simulated our smoke, so let's render out our scene. Let's go to rendering, render setup. Then in the common parameters, I'm gonna use active time segment 0 to 150. For resolution, I'm gonna use 800 by 600, and then I'm gonna take save file and gonna name our text 000, and as a file type I'm using PNG sequence. Click save. Then we need to tell Max to separate our scene into passes. So let's go to render elements and click on the add button. Then I'm gonna select diffuse, FumeFX smoke, and shadow. Click OK. If we click on diffuse, and down there there is an option, diffuse texture element, which says lighting. So it renders out our diffuse path with the lighting included. So make sure you have this option enabled. And that's it. Let's hit render. Here we are in After Effects. I have already imported our footage. So let's drag our diffuse layer into a new comp, then our shadow, and our smoke on top. I'm gonna rename our layers to smoke, shadow, and diffuse. Then what we need to do is change the transfer mode from the smoke to add. There we have it. And what you might notice is that our smoke is a little bit different from what we saw in the 3D Studio Max render panel. And if we change to alpha here, you can see that there is a lot more smoke in the alpha channel than what's in the RGB channel. So a solution for this is to add a curves effect to our smoke layer, then change the channel to alpha and push it a bit, and now we brought in our detail back. If we disable the curves effect, you'll notice that's quite a difference. Okay, I'm here at about 2 seconds. I'm gonna select our diffuse layer, press Alt and the left bracket key, then go to about 4 seconds and 10 frames, press Alt and the right bracket key so we cut our diffuse layer, and then at the start we have only our smoke, then our diffuse, and then again only our smoke. And that's it. Well, you might ask, why did we export it our scene into different passes and brought them into After Effects? Well, the main reason behind that is that, let's for example say that you have a project for a client, and he says, okay, that's a cool scene, I like it. Still, could you change the colors? Maybe to green or orange, and show me some different styles of the project. And what you need to do is go back into 3D Studio Max, change the colors, and render the scene. And that's not quite convenient in rendering time. Let's, for example, say that you're working with uh, full HD resolution or even higher. That's gonna take a few hours to render out uh, a decent scene. So the solution is to take it to a compositing application, and then you can change the colors, the saturation, the opacity, everything you need, and that's it. Let's, for example, I'm gonna show you. Well, we have our curves selected. Let me change it. Apply to the diffuse layer, and if we select the red channel and push it a bit, and then yep, introduce a little bit of green and change our blue, push the red, and then we can Control C the curves and Control V to paste it. I'm gonna only introduce a little bit of the alpha again, and there we have it. We have a nice orange scene for seconds. Let me just reset everything. I'm gonna delete the curves for diffuse layer. Then I'm gonna bring our alpha back a bit, and now let's make a run preview and see what it looks like. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial.